Hey there, Patrick. Welcome in.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time out of your day. We really appreciate it. All right, everybody, we are coming up here with our last speaker of the day. Last but very not least, we have Patrick McGarry, who is the Federal Chief Data Officer at ServiceNow. He's a solution-oriented business leader focused on data strategy, governance, and responsible AI adoption. So we're super pumped to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Patrick.
Yeah, hey, nice to see everybody. Seems like there's a healthy turnout. Um, I'm a longtime data nerd. Been in and around data for probably the better part of 3 decades. Mostly as an entrepreneur. I love the startup game. But most recently, as you mentioned, I landed at ServiceNow, and my last company got acquired here about 7 months ago. And just really get excited about sort of data and AI. We've been doing that for a long time now, even before the sort of explosion of the LLM world. So it's been quite a journey, and it's not slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of quite a journey, you really do have one from the Navy to where you're at now. What got you into this data world in the first place?
Well, that's a much longer story about the transition from the Navy, but I did spend a little time in the Navy. Um, But when I got out, I sort of fell back to University of Michigan, finished my computer science, and from there, I just sort of socially started working at tech companies and got sucked into the Silicon Valley world of first it was media and then sort of some of the deeper infrastructure tech that we got to play with. So. Spent a lot of time there as an open source developer and then building open source developer communities. So helping larger organizations, the Samsungs and the Intels of the world, to come together and build open source tech, most of it around, data infrastructure. And then, just the life of a Silicon Valley startup guy. So made the rounds.
Yeah, for somebody in here, I'm sure one of out of the 108 people in here, this is a complete foreign language to them. So for someone who is not in the field at all, they're starting from square zero. Can you explain to them, in a little bit of simpler terms exactly what you do?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, really, I'm helping people to understand sort of how to get their arms around their data. That's the big challenge right now. Everybody wants to go straight to that AI dessert table, but really, when you're using AI, it's not that it's creating problems with data; it's just that it's exposing them. The vast majority of enterprises across the ecosystem have neglected their data infrastructure for so long. And a lot of decisions inside of the enterprise have been made with, let's say, gut instinct as opposed to necessarily hard data, even when they have the data at their fingertips. And so, really, what I'm helping them do is to understand, how to even find what they have and get it operational. And then once you have your arms around the data, what kind of cool stuff can you start doing with it? Advanced analytics and all the way through to some of the more advanced AI applications, agentic and the like. So.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for explaining that. I don't know about anybody else, but that helps me understand it a little bit better. I see Nick has his hand raised. He is our AI guy here in the chat, so I'm sure he's gonna have a bunch of awesome questions for you.
Yeah, far
Yeah,
away,
I
Nick.
mean, as soon as I'm a huge fan of what you're talking about right here, right? So, like, the big thing right now is like AI identities, right? Allowing them into workspaces. They should have their own identities and all these things. I got so many things I would like to ask you, but rather than like, hyping up, talking all hype with GRC stuff, because I'm all, governance, risk, and compliance. That's just like my bread and butter. How would you explain it to the rest of the team that, maybe they're not in the cybersecurity or AI space, but, they have a long history of, going through checklists and running through like governance, risk, and compliance from that aspect? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to get into cyber. I want to get into cyber. And it's like, well, what kind of stuff do you want to do? There's like 8 different domains of cyber that you can get into. Can you touch on governance, risk, and compliance for the rest of the team?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, first and foremost, let me just say that my transition from the military and into tech, I may have been a long time nerd, but I worked for a living and I was a bosun's mate. So I was not in cyber. I could jump, anyone can make this jump, right? Especially now, just being able to essentially have a tutor in your hip pocket with these LLMs, they can meet you where you are and help you to kind of find the resources that you need to go forward. Super great as a accelerated resource and research tool. As far as the rest of it, if I understand your question correctly, is understanding, like how can you, in layman's terms, sort of get your arms around governance, risk, and compliance when it comes to maybe not just AI, but AI and data at large. And for me, I think this is an incredibly broad topic. Like there are people that spend their entire career just in that space, right? So for someone like me to answer it in the next 15 seconds, I think would not do justice to that. But knowing that, I would say that looking at AI and data, when you think about governance, it's really just understanding what is it that you have, where's it coming from, where's it going to, who's using it, and are they using it appropriately when it comes to things like policies and things like that. So uh, practically, often people will do this with tools. Like historically, people have just done this with spreadsheets. Like, what are the data assets that we have? Who's checked them out? Who's using them? Obviously, we've gotten far more sophisticated about that since. But at the end of the day, it's just like running an inventory on a supply chain system, right? You've got maybe some sensitive things. If you're the guy at the armory checking out, actual physical hardware, you're going to want to know who's got the stuff that you handed out and when and if it came back. Same thing here. It's like you got to understand your digital footprint, know who's using your data, whether it's human beings, whether it's AI agents, or whether it's simply just it's being used to be displayed in a dashboard. And then being able to trace that lineage, trace where did my data come from so that I can understand, but also where's my data going to? Because if you're a data steward whose job it is to manage these things and you're going to shut the lights off on something, you got to know whose day you're going to ruin downstream. So when you're thinking about sort of risk and compliance and governance, those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was just, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally on the governance, risk, and compliance. I was trying to, you know, leverage to the other people that are maybe interested in getting into cyber. A good starting point could be governance, risk, and compliance.
Yeah, definitely. And really, it's just thinking about, you know, whatever company you're at, it's really the what do I have? Where's it coming from? Where's it going to? And who's using it? Like that's kind of the idea. The software, the tech, the way that you do that is sort of immaterial. You're just trying to understand that whatever works for you.
Yeah, thank you,
Looks like
Nick. Yeah, Jacob, go ahead.
Gotta make sure I'm unmuted. Hello, sir. Thank you for being here. I had a question in regards. You said you were a BOSA mate, but you obviously had to break into tech in some way, shape, or form. How did you end up focusing on AI versus the many myriad of tech-related career fields out there?
honestly, I kind of fell into it and I just started playing with things. As I mentioned, my first transition was a tech company, but it was a media company. And so we were really, it was, a news site back in the day when news sites were sort of much more, I'll say early days of the internet. Let's just put it that way. Uh, but the interesting thing was when we were doing these news sites and we were building sort of these robust uh, pieces of infrastructure to serve surge usage on the internet in the early days when we didn't have all of the tech that we do today. Started just to look at self-serving things like user data. How many users were we getting site traffic? What were they doing? Where were they going? Where were they coming from on different sites of the internet? It's the normal sort of traffic analysis. But unlike today, where you've got, Google Analytics and any one of myriad sort of solutions, we kind of had to roll it ourselves. And so really just kind of rolling your sleeves up and playing with it, and these days, be able to go and like, the sort of vibe coding approach, like, hey, I can't write a single line of Go or Python or what have you, but I can describe what I want, and I'm not going to get an enterprise system out of the end, but I can start understanding how things connect and how things come together. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer to say I fell into AI sort of by accident, just because I was really interested in data for my own sort of purposes, my own insights. And then as the technology evolved, before LLMs even, looking at sort of data science type things and using machine learning and deep learning, uh, just, hey, this is going to make my life easier, so maybe I should read a book and try to educate myself. Looks like we got a
Albert,
question from Albert.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Actually, sorry, I hope this is okay, but I actually got two. One actually leads into what you had just said, started going on about with the automation space. So with automation taking over and affecting the job market as much as it is, where do you see the future going? Like, is it going into the future? What roles do you see being, if it's not automation proof necessarily, then how can we best integrate ourselves into the job market or into these roles to where we're not as impacted by it?
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing, and I think that there's still a lot of trepidation around, what's AI going to do to the job market? Like we're already seeing some impact. I think the pendulum has swung a little too far and it needs to come back. But
Hmm.
ultimately, I've been telling people, AI is not going to take your job, especially if you are some sort of a subject matter expert. Even if you can't spell SQL, like you have a lot of value to add in terms of, we can't trust the agents yet and all those sorts of things.
Hmm.
Like the tech is just not where it needs to be. And so when I start thinking about framing of automation proof, like the thing that's going to take your job is a guy who knows how to use AI, not
Hmm.
AI itself, right? And so things that are going to be maybe not automation proof, but automation resistant, like anything that's got physical complexity and unpredictability. Obviously the skilled trades, getting away from tech entirely, electricians,
Right.
plumbers, HVAC, whatever, like we're going to need that in spades. But like if you start looking at these white collar jobs in terms of like the automation, really what you're going to want to start doing is if you had a team of people doing your job and you set on top of them, what are the things, what are the insights, what's the strategic direction that you need to start taking the business in if you didn't have to do the menial sort of tasks that you have today? And obviously they're not going to hire 50 people for every person, but that's really what AI is allowing you to do is offload 80% of that repetitive work so that you can
Hmm.
pick your head up and look around and get smart about what else is happening. And I think regardless of what your job is, getting more efficient and then being able to sort of stretch different muscles, I think it's just going to be an adjustment to think about how that works. Just like moving from an individual contributor role into a management role is an adjustment for anybody that has or will do that. So I think we
Yeah,
got to
that
think
makes
about it
sense.
kind of the same way.
Thank you. And then second question, with AI governance moving as fast as it is, what principles do you think would be best for federal leaders to focus on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the biggest thing, the biggest gap, I'll say, in AI in general, and the reason that so many AI pilots get stuck in what I'll call the toy phase, is that there's no auditability, there's no transparency in what is happening. We've started to scratch the surface with things like retrieval augmented generation, so RAG, or
Hmm.
more specifically with graph RAG, where you can start sketching in the edges of what your AI is allowed to quote unquote know or be expert in. But those still have gaps because a lot of what gets filled in between is still the training data, which nobody has visibility into really,
Hmm.
if you're talking LLMs. So
Right.
for me, looking at the AI piece of the equation is we need to take that black box and figure out how to turn it into a glass box. Now, I can tell you there are people definitely working on this, but that's going to be the challenge of the federal worker is the more that you can sort of make your AI show its work, write its sources, treat it like an academic research partner who has to write all of your MLA citations into the paper that you just got done writing. Same concept. Like we got to get better at understanding sort of the genesis of the ideas that are coming out of that black box.
Okay, that makes sense. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
awesome questions. Nick, what's up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna talk to you all day long. Well, I can't. No. Hey, just a quick question for you is, what is so I'm really infatuated with your work role and what you're doing, and I really just trying to sing from the same sheet of music. But what does your typical like week look like in the position that you're in right now? How does that look for you? I mean, is it different every day? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I'm most excited about this role, even though I'm getting out of the startup world and coming into a 30,000 person company. The thing that I love the most about it is it still feels very startup-y in terms of my role. You know, one of the guys that leads public sector here had some really sage advice. He said, "Look, spend about half your time working on the business and about half your time working in the business." And really, what he's talking about is there's a lot of knowledge gaps in the market when it comes to data and AI. So, I spend about half of my time helping our customers and prospects and things understand what does data modernization look like? What does good AI utilization look like? What does it mean to actually get your arms around these concepts and turn them into something operational, especially in the context of the Fed Civ world or the department or the IC. And so the interesting thing for me is like I get to go out and help them solve all their problems, which are different. Just every single time it's a different problem to solve, which is fun. The other half is working sort of on the business, right? So looking internally, helping to skill up more people, to create more data experts and train the trainers so that we can sort of accelerate how fast knowledge is created and spread within the organization. So to me, it's really fun because I get to solve hard problems and then I get to share the outcomes of those problems with people so that they can stay on the sort of cutting edge.
That's really unique for such a large company as well, Patrick. I feel like you don't hear that very often, where it still gives that startup feel, which is really, really awesome.
Yeah, I
Jose,
mean I think it's becoming more normalized, I guess,
yeah,
especially with all of the C roles. It used to be like, well, we had 5 guys in the C-suite, right? You had COO, CEO, CFO, whatever, and like maybe you would replicate some of those into some different departmental. But now, it's I'll call it the EIEIO proliferation, right? You've got CDOs and CDAIOs, and like everybody is becoming more specialized, which I think gives them more time to be sort of narrowly focused and then share that knowledge back with the org, which is pretty cool.
yeah, no, that's really awesome. Jose, go ahead, sir.
Hello, thank you for sharing everything with us, like taking the time to be with us here today. My question is, how do you personally balance pushing innovation forward while keeping risk in check?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a challenge, and I think there's no one good answer. What I will say is that there are plenty of risk frameworks. I did not invent one, but I have certainly used a number of different risk and compliance frameworks. But really, you have to figure out what is the appetite of the organization that you're working within. And even, if I'm at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or if I'm at, the FEC or SEC or wherever I am, like finance data, personnel data, classified data, everybody's going to have a different sort of risk tolerance when it comes to their data and how it's being used and how it's being shared. So for me, I would say that the best thing you could do is start with some risk tolerance frameworks that have already been created and sort of reverse engineer those specifically for your organization. You're going to get two things out of that. You're going to get sort of the deeper understanding of what it is that makes up a risk framework. What are the things that I have to think about? But then you're also going to get sort of the specific mapping of those concepts to your organization, and often just the simple task of essentially writing it down can really help to illuminate some dark corners that people haven't paid attention to for a while. So, NIST has got some good ones. There's some financial specific risk models. So there's probably something in your neck of the woods, regardless of what your organization is or does. I would start there and then back your way into how that applies to your own organization and customize as needed. That's going to serve you far better than trying to start from scratch or trying to stay in a very sort of rigid model of someone else's devising.
Okay. And another question, kind of like separate from the first one. You said that you were not cyber or anything related to. How did you start your process into coming into this? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I had the advantage of growing up when building your own computer was still a badge of honor, showing my age a little bit, but really just being curious and just going and building things or doing things because I wanted to know the answer. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't even have to have a degree or a ton of like OJT kind of training. Uh, you just have to have a will to learn, like a will to say, hey, there's something I don't know over that hill, and I'm going to climb that hill. And I think you don't have to be super brilliant. I think, consistency is far more impactful. You put consistency together with sort of a desire, to advance yourself, and those two things are going to serve you far better than, even some of the other sort of silver spoon legs up in the world, I think.
thank you.
Very well put, Patrick. We have a lot of mentors coming on here, and I would say almost all of them say those soft skills are way, way more important than something that could be taught. Like if you have the skill, you had the persistency to get through getting taught something, then you're going to do an amazing job once you get there. So very well put. Haley, go ahead.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah.
My question is, are there any big misconceptions people have about responsible AI that you wish more people understood?
What's up, Mel?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is that AI is or can be responsible. Like I would remove that from the equation. Like AI is not responsible. Your system designers need to be responsible in how they implement the technology. But just like you wouldn't say, and I know I'm picking on your words a little bit. It's just, I don't think the question was a bad one. I just wanted to sort of reframe it in people's minds. You're not going to talk about the responsible Outlook client or your responsible Excel spreadsheet. And so realistically, you have to get sort of underneath the tech, right? Because even with AI, whether that's, Claude or Gemini or Hugging Face or like whatever it is that you're using, like, and even those are only one specific kind of AI, right? LLMs are their own specific thing. You can start once you sort of peel back the onion and you start going into the, deep learning and machine learning and some of these other like neural networks and things like that. Like if you decide to go down those rabbit holes, you have to understand that like it's just software. And I know that's a little reductionist, but ultimately understanding how a system is built, how it operates, what are the inputs and outputs, and like what are the levers that I can pull to affect those outcomes, is going to be way more interesting. And so I think ultimately responsibility kind of resides with person number one, which is you. Like you understanding like what are the limits the risks and the tolerances of the piece of software that I am deploying, I think is going to be really, really important when you start thinking about responsible AI usage. So I hope I answered your question, but I did want to reframe it for people because I hear a lot of misconceptions when people talk about responsible AI and they really assign a personification to the technology in a way that I don't think is particularly healthy or accretive to success.
You
Good
did
question,
answer my
though.
question, and thank you.
Yeah. Nick, go ahead, sir.
Nobody else raised their hand, but I'm back. Oh, there's somebody else. Let's let Trent ask first, and then I'll come back.
How you doing, Patrick?
Good. What can I do for you?
Just had a question for those IT people that are not more on the programming and scripting side. The ServiceNow, are there like good amount of opportunities that are more like client side in other areas?
Yeah, and I would say that ServiceNow is not unique in this, and it's even more true when you get into some of the like consultancies, whether they're boutique consultancies or the big SIs, go work for GD or Deloitte or whoever.
Okay.
Whether it's a technology company or whether it's a sort of an implementer, butts and seats kind of company, I would say that more and more the way that people are composing technology, so assembling different bespoke pieces where,
Mhm.
maybe a client has Databricks and Power BI and Excel spreadsheets and whatever else, right? And
Yeah.
you're bringing in new technology from ServiceNow or whoever else. The way that you stitch that together to serve the mission outcome that you're trying to address often requires a lot of plumbing. And so most companies that exist in that space have at least a handful of plumbers on hand, right? And so I think there are always opportunities as the technologies grow and expand or contract. There's acquisitions, there's winners, there's losers, et cetera. The need for people that can understand sort of multiple pieces, act as the human translator between them, and then go wire the bits together to make them work. There's always going to be a heavy appetite for folks like that, and right now is no exception, whether it's at ServiceNow or anyone else. If you're on the IT side of the house,
Okay.
you may not be a deep level data scientist, you may not be writing code, but I would hazard to guess that you understand how to deploy software in a sort of
Yeah.
normalized way, that it's secure and the connections are sort of operating in the normal tolerances that you would expect. And people that
Mhm.
can do that and understand things that are both ends of that pipeline are incredibly valuable, especially now.
Okay. All right. Well, call me Mario because I'm gonna start plumbing out there.
That's right.
I also
That's
sent you
right.
a message on LinkedIn also, so hopefully we can connect.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to connect. I'm also happy to keep the conversation going, especially, whether it's people that are skill
All right.
bridging out, people that are already out and looking at how to better sort of leverage what you did
Yeah.
on the inside. Always happy to answer questions.
Yeah, awesome question, Trent, and thank you so much, Patrick. That's super generous. Nick, did you have another question?
I have about a million questions, but we'll just no.
You're
Hey
just gonna have to
Patrick,
call
thanks
Patrick on
again.
your own too.
I definitely am. I already sent you a LinkedIn request. I definitely want to learn as much as I can from you. And that's actually kind of what I was going to ask you. And here is, I've actually sat through a couple interviews. I didn't do as hot as I thought I was going to do. They asked me some questions, and I draw the blank. I have 20 years experience, cybersecurity, 3 years heavily into the AI space. I do IDEs, I do all the DevOpsy type stuff, GitHub Actions. I mess around with anti-gravity right now. I've been messing around with Cursor quite a bit. Built out a whole bunch of different items because I wanted to, build out like SOC 2 reports that can be automated. just really ingrained in learning all these things. However, when I get into an interview and somebody asks, well, what AI tools do you use? Or, I draw like a blank sometimes and I kind of jack that up. Any advice that you would have for somebody like me who just wants to say everything, but doesn't want to say everything because then it sounds like too much?
Yeah, honestly, I've found one of my favorite things to do driving in the car. It used to be, just dead time, especially in the Beltway traffic, right? Beltway traffic sucks, coming home, driving for 2.5 hours or whatever it is that your commute looks like. I'm sure all of us have at least a fair amount of time where we're sitting and staring at taillights, and essentially wasting time. I have made a huge amount of usage of Claude Voice. Um, Start a conversation with your AI, and whether it's interview training, like what are the questions they're going to ask, like let's mock handle some interview questions. You can just have a conversation with someone who literally has the entire world's uh, wealth of knowledge at their fingertips. And I use this for, strengthening business proposals or asking about edge cases, or, you know, having it give me a daily briefing on what are some of the newest things that are showing up in the news around AI, whether it's companies moves or things like that. But using like a Claude voice while you're in the car and just asking it questions and using it as someone who can actually look at the bits while you're looking at the road is super, super helpful. And what a great way to do some mock interviewing and just say like, hey, throw me some curveballs and we'll see how I do. And then, it's usually pretty good at sort of composing some of the things that you may want to know.
Yeah, I know. I always feel like I'm wasting a bunch of time whenever I'm in the car going anywhere. If it's more than like a 20-minute drive, I am driving myself insane. Somebody asked in the chat, they said, where should they be looking for some OJT in this sector? Where could they find some really good maybe training opportunities or entry-level positions?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be predicated on what it is you want to do as to where you're going to find that training. Obviously, with AI and all that stuff, like I was just saying, like you can use that and sort of accelerate yourself into it, either to find the training, go search the web for me, or whether it's, there are ways that it can help you sort of wrap your brain around things. But in terms of actual OJT, I would start looking at what are the software that people are using in the industry that you want to tackle, right? If you're going into aerospace and defense, are there specific, design systems or what have you? And then oftentimes, anybody that's got a point solution, if they're smart, they're trying to sort of build the next generation of users of their software. Just like ServiceNow has ServiceNow University, and there are literally thousands of hours of training that you can go take. And in many cases, if you want to put the OJ piece of that training in there as well, companies are hiring, whether it's part-time interns or whether you're coming in at a lower tier, and then there's a sort of advancement pipeline where they're going to actually help you get a handle on what's above and where you're headed. So I think there's a lot of options. I think it's going to be a little bit different depending on, are you a cyber person? Are you a pure data scientist? Are you a business analyst? Like, it's going to be a little different just depending on the tools and where you're going to find the training. But I think there's a lot of options.
Yeah, you mentioned the ServiceNow University. Can you tell us a little more about that? What is that? Is that something they can just access for free, or is it a subscription? What is that?
Yeah, no, anybody should be able to use actually, let me just grab it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
ServiceNow University. Helps if I can type it.
Maybe it's a super known thing to people in the industry, but I hadn't heard of it, so.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's just learning.service.now. They moved it, which is why I had to go look. Yes, if you go to learning.service.now, you should be able to create a free account. Tons and tons of hours in there. If you get deep enough, I think you can even spin up free instances so that you can go do some hands-on stuff with some of the different, like, keep in mind now, I am not a ServiceNow guy. I built a startup and we got bought by ServiceNow 7 months ago. So I am also spending a fair amount of time in the ServiceNow University, trying to make sure I know the entire breadth of their catalog. But there's a lot of good stuff in there. And, just like I said, any other company, I think Snowflake has an allegory. I think Databricks has something similar. So like, there's definitely a lot of resources out there. If anything, it's trying to make sure that you're picking a path and sort of building yourself a progression, so that you don't just eat, 24 hours a day staring at training screens, which would be easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. How could they showcase kind of doing these trainings? Say they went on ServiceNow University and they did a bunch of trainings. How could they showcase that in an interview?
Yeah, I mean, ServiceNow has a badging program. They
Oh,
have certification tests, just like the old, like the Red Hat pipelines, right? Red Hat certified engineer and things like that coming out the back end of those trainings. So, the Cisco exams, or project management has a similar thing. So like there's definitely ways to either even just socially badge it, or actual come out with certifications and thing on the other side.
okay, awesome. Nick, what is up?
What is up? So can you explain the entrepreneur piece to ServiceNow collecting you up, if you will, and what that kind of was like for you? And maybe there's some people on the call that are aspiring entrepreneurs. Maybe I guess kind of help direct them in that avenue as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the entrepreneur's journey, look up a speech called Man in the Arena, first of all. If you haven't heard it, it's great. It's one of my favorites. But the thing that I will say about the entrepreneur's journey is I don't think for me there is any greater feeling than going from 0 to 1. Like, you can scale 1 to 1 million, you can scale 1 to 1 billion, and like those are much more well-trod pathways. But anytime you're building something brand new from scratch, 0 to 1, that is incredibly, to me, gratifying, right? Like, I have created something net new in the world. I've left my mark. Sometimes it doesn't pan out so well. You build from 0 to 0.5, and then from 0.5 to -4. And like, it's not always sort of a predictable trajectory, but I think that's part of the excitement, right? And so, the entrepreneur's journey is a thing that I've done for a long time and several different ways. But I think there are a lot of resources available to you, first and foremost. Like, a lot of people have gone down that road. There's incubators, there's venture capitalists that now roll up their sleeves. It used to be that, hey, let's go to the Valley. If you got a really good idea and you can demonstrate it's headed somewhere, maybe Andreessen Horowitz will throw a big pile of cash at you, and then they'll walk away and expect you to produce and grow and all those things. But now, you have these VCs. My last startup was Data.World. That's what got bought by ServiceNow, and we had some of the most amazing VCs. Chicago Ventures was early in, really rolled up their sleeves and helped us understand like what was the landscape in terms of funding and competition, and how was product market fit perceived from the outside, because sometimes you get into a little bit of an echo chamber. But it's a really sort of complex thing with a lot of moving parts. So if you've never done it before, I would definitely make sure that you find somebody that's going to join you on that journey that has, either as an advisor, and I'm always a big fan of building sort of advisory networks for my businesses, whether they're big or small. Finding experts that can come in and help you answer questions, make introductions, etc., absolutely invaluable. But then as you start to grow into that, and as you start to scale more and more, even as you climb the venture ladder, right? So our Series C was led by Goldman Sachs. They have a whole portfolio team that comes along with that money. And so there are a lot of resources that can help you succeed. It's just knowing that they're there and then availing yourselves of them. But like I said, once you build something, sort of prove it out, get it into the market, and then getting to sort of what they call product market fit. That's where, like, yeah, you have a thing and it's useful, but now you've made sure that it fits the market. There is a large group of people that it is useful for, so much so that you should be able to build a business on it. And then it's a question of scaling and growth, and understanding how to build that business and scale it in a intelligent way, so that you don't get too top heavy and fall over or under resourced and starved. So it's definitely I think it's the best game in the world, to be honest. Sorry, that was kind of a lot, and it was kind of
No,
all over the
I mean,
place. It's
no,
like
it definitely,
there's so much there. I just
no, I know. And it definitely got me thinking on things. And I was going to kind of follow up with kind of a little left, but just your take on like, if you are a new entrepreneur and, you know, I develop things and do all those, what's your take on like CRMs and like, and I know you're like, well, I'm ServiceNow, so I can't really talk about that, but for non-ServiceNow response, like for just like a single CRM for a new person starting out as like a young entrepreneur, if you will.
Yeah, just know that whatever, and it's not just CRMs, any sort of business productivity or back office software, whatever you choose first and however you implement it first, even if you went straight to Salesforce because you were independently wealthy or something and you wanted a big Salesforce install and you wanted it to grow with you, I can virtually guarantee that your Salesforce implementation the first time around is going to be wrong and you're going to have to redo it. So just like get used to the fact that the decisions that you make will be right for the time that you make them. And as you grow, constantly reevaluate, is this tool still providing productivity or is it a piece of antiquated technology from a bygone era? Even if it was 6 months ago, that may be a bygone area in the speed of your business. And so, that I think is more than anything else is just be ready to re-innovate, even on your boring back office stuff. Whether it's, Concur or Expensify or whatever for expense reporting, or whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot or whoever for CRM or like whatever it is. I think that also has to be very agile. So finding people that have a lot of passion around that back office stuff as you grow your company, they're some of the biggest unsung heroes in the startup world, in my opinion.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute for a second. Very well said, Patrick. I feel like that could stand for any startup that anybody in here is thinking of, not just AI or data or this field. That advice could really go for anything that you guys are trying to start. Well, I just have one last question for you, Patrick. I'd really like to hear what you're really excited about in the data and AI world here in maybe the next 3 to 5 years.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of the quaint answer at this point, but like the places that AI is taking us with respect to efficiency, like it's always going to be a long tail of who's pushing the bleeding edge versus can we get the masses, sort of the Python ate the possum sort of bolus through the pipeline, and then you've got sort of the long tail of folks that are resistant to change. But I think that the tools available to people are helping to accelerate the adoption of technology, whatever that technology is, in a way that is super interesting. And I think we've spent the last 10 years or more, but certainly the last 10 years, collecting data and then being unable to fully operationalize it or leverage it. I think we now have the technology and the tools to be able to go back and look at all the data that we've been collecting. First of all, to understand what we maybe shouldn't be collecting, and so we can kind of clean up the garbage pile, and find the diamonds that are in there. But the ability for us to rapidly assess and gain useful insights from the hordes of data that are generated every day, I think is going to be incredibly interesting in terms of what those outputs look like. Some interesting things. I did some work with actually the Malaysian government a while ago, where they were using social media data as an early indicator of financial markets, believe it or not, and they found some really interesting correlation. And it's things like that things that are the world is so interconnected and interrelated, the butterfly effect, right? Like we're going to be able to start understanding what are the outcomes when the butterfly beats its wings on the other side of the earth. How is that going to affect us today, tomorrow, next week, next year? Like the data's there, and it's super interesting with sort of how technology is evolving to let us actually utilize it.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing. I don't think anybody would connect a lot of those things if it wasn't there. So that's gonna be pretty crazy to see here in the upcoming years. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for coming on. This was awesome. Some of the time I didn't exactly know what was going on in the conversations, but I learned a lot, I think, today. And so this was awesome. I appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, awesome. It was great. I love the questions, and it's
Yeah.
always fun for me to talk shop like this. So if folks think of questions that you didn't ask, hit me on LinkedIn or what have you, and I'm happy to continue the conversation because honestly, you asked me what gets me excited. Like that was the technology answer. The real answer is like just talking shop. And I often learn just as much from, people asking me questions as I do from, my own research and, just chatting with people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I did it coming up is I would ask a ton of
Yeah.
questions and it would be a pretty poor recompense if I didn't do the same with people that were coming up and had questions. So it is one of my favorite things to do is to just talk shop.
Yeah, we appreciate you giving it back. I'm sure you're gonna at least have a few messages probably in your inbox right now, so get ready for it. Nick is gonna be
Fantastic.
chatting your ear off all the rest of today.
Bring it on.
All right, have a wonderful rest of your